All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Lineman Life Podcast Live. Usually, Lineman Life Podcast is with myself, Uche, Nwaneri, your observant lineman, and Eben Britton, former offensive lineman for the Chicago Bears. But today, I have a special guest, a special guy who's coming to you from Sports Wars, from Geeks and Gamers. We're all in the same crew. It is Ryan Kennel from RK Outpost. Ryan, what is going on, brother?
Uche, thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having me. Feels good. You know, we're fresh off. I know you haven't played in the NFL for a while, but I tell you what, we came off a big victory the other night on Andy Signore's channel.
Yes, we did.
Nerd Wars. So, you know, I may not, you know, I'm not quite built like a lineman. I get that. Maybe now that Nick Hardwick Svelte Life lineman style, maybe that. Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, we had a big win the other night on Andy Signore's Popcorn Planet. It was us, the Zack Snyder DCEU fans, versus the we actually were doing a back and forth as to whether a Snyder cut would save the Justice League film. But that's a topic for another day. Right now, we're going to talk a little bit about the situation going on in the NFL. Myles Garrett, who appealed his indefinite suspension from the NFL, had that indefinite suspension upheld by the NFL. One of Myles Garrett, or the main defense that Myles Garrett used in order to list his appeal, was that Mason Rudolph, in some unknown way, uttered a racial slur at Myles Garrett, which then instigated the entire incident that the entire world has seen play out, of Myles Garrett nonchalantly ripping the helmet off of Mason Rudolph's head and then clubbing him over the head with it. And what do you think about this whole situation, Ryan? What do you think is going on with that?
Now, you know, when this happened, you know, we happened to be kind of on streaming like Jedi Fallen Order. And this happened, and I immediately went and made a video for Sports Wars. And the like you said, the nonchalant way, Mason Rudolph could legitimately have died right there. And it wouldn't have been a huge shock or surprise if it happened. He got lucky. And for Myles Garrett, you know, after the game, he was pretty, you know, calm, cool, and collected, just sitting there saying, you know, I can't lose control like that, can't do that. You know, maybe that would have been a great time to say, well, you know, he used the N-word or you know, something, right? He used racial slur. That's why I lost my cool. Even then, I don't know if I would have believed it, because we have the entire incident on camera. You've got Marquise Pouncey standing right there, right next to Mason Rudolph the entire time. I feel like if he was, using racial slurs, maybe Marquise Pouncey might have, looked at him funny,
or may not have jumped on and pummeled him after the fact, maybe.
Exactly. So, you know, it all seems really fishy to me. I don't buy it at all. A week later, coming out and saying this, it's a cop out. It's a cheap cop out, playing the race card, and I don't respect it at all.
Yeah, I got to say that honestly, I agree with everything you're saying. I actually just saw the headline of it not more than 10 or 15 minutes ago, and the first thing that came to my mind was he's lying. Same way that Dave Chappelle talked about Jussie Smollett, and how Jussie Smollett, after accusing two Trump supporter, MAGA hat wearing gentlemen, Nigerian workout warriors, jumped him and beat him up in the streets of Chicago in -degree weather or something. I'm not sure, but after that, Dave Chappelle goes on and talks about how the black population was very silent about it. And why were we silent? Because we knew he was lying. And that's the same situation we have here with Myles Garrett. When I read that headline, honestly, I sat there and I just shook my head and was like, he's lying. There's no way. If somebody uses I have not actually seen that happen on the field of football in my entire career. I've never heard a racial slur be uttered from one player to another, regardless of who it is, while I played in the NFL. But in every instance that it did happen, in any situation where, I know Richie Incognito had a couple situations like that. There was never a brawl that broke out because of it. There might be some words that are had between the players, but the situation does not escalate into a street brawl where you're using football helmets as actual weapons. And to hear or to see that Myles Garrett said that, it was laughable almost to a degree. It was laughable because, we all know that's a serious thing to say about somebody. That's a serious accusation to make. But in this situation where we have video evidence, we know what Mason Rudolph said after he got his helmet ripped off and got, cheap shot knocked down from behind by, I'm embarrassed to say, a Nigerian player. You could read his lips on the ground in slow motion, and you know what he said. And if there was ever a time to use a racial slur, that may have been the moment. But he didn't go. He didn't go there with it. He called Ogunboji or whatever the hell his last name is. I'm Nigerian, but I don't know his last name.
If you can't pronounce it, there's no reason that I should be able to.
He calls him a bitch. And, that's pretty consistent to the situation that he was in. But if there was ever a moment for it to be a racial slur, that would have been then. And again, like you said very clearly, if he actually had a legitimate claim that Mason Rudolph said something like that, then he would have said it in the post-game interviews when your mind is finally cleared, everything is set in place as far as how you want to respond to the reporters that are going to be in the locker room 10 to 15 minutes after the game ends. And it would have been brought up then. There would have been something brought up then. But now at your appeal hearing, now you want to talk about, he used a racial slur, and that's why I feel like I shouldn't be suspended indefinitely for clubbing him over the head with the helmet because he insulted me with a racial epithet. No, stop, dude. And it's laughable. And I can only imagine that somebody maybe chuckled a little in the hearing when they read that. And we're just kind of like, no, that's not. You never said a word. He never said a word. You ripped his helmet off and clubbed him with it. That's pretty much what the film shows.
Yeah, and I was really interested to hear your take on this. I didn't ask you before I went live because I kind of wanted to hear it. If you had ever heard that happen before on the field, and you said no. And I find that interesting because I feel like there's a stigma around it. Like that's something that just happens that just like black players have to deal with. And I've never seen or heard of it myself. I have never heard in my life a white person use a racial slur to a black person. Have I heard it? Have I heard people mutter it? Yes, I have. I've never heard it in the presence of someone directed at anyone, anything like that.
Yeah.
And that's why when I see this happen, I am immediately skeptical. We had Russell Westbrook a couple years ago, slap a phone out of somebody's hand because he was mad post game.
Yeah.
And then later we hear, oh, well, he was using racial slurs. That's why I got so upset. That's why I lost control. Come on. If we're in a crowded arena and some dude is yelling, dropping the N-bomb, can you imagine the way that people would react all around you? That's not acceptable. It is not acceptable despite this narrative that wants to be painted. So it was really interesting to hear your take on that. And I'm glad it was kind of in line with my thoughts.
Yeah, man. Look, at the end of the day, does this kind of thing happen in the world? Sure. But a lot of times when it happens, it's dealt with right then, right there, and it's made known that was a situation, correct? It doesn't come out days later. It doesn't come out in the interview hours later. So a lot of times, especially in the African American community, we sometimes even look at when people bring these things up. You go to like a DMV office, you go to a hospital, you go anywhere where people have to wait in an idle line to get served. And, I remember when I was, coming up, every now and again, you hear a situation where somebody's just being a little bit too ignorant and they're not happy with how things are going, how things aren't going their way. And so they start lashing out. And then when somebody says, well, why did you do that? They say, oh, because he called me an N-word. And it's like, dude, we all were here. He didn't call you no N-word. What are you talking about? Like, oh, yeah, it's because I'm black. No, it's not because you're black. It's because you're a fucking idiot. Like, because you're acting like a fool. So people who act like fools get treated like fools. And again, like I said, it's not to say that it doesn't happen. I'm just saying in a situation like this, for him to bring up that as his rebuttal against his indefinite suspension, it's just not even feasible for us to look at that and say, oh, he's telling the truth, because we know that it's not the case. He would have said so on the field. Other players would have known about it. He would have said so in the locker room. Everybody in the locker room, including the reporters, would have known about it then. Why now? Because it's not true. Because that's the only thing you can reach to even hope for an even slither of a chance at having a reduction in that indefinite suspension. But as we all know, the NFL upheld it, and I agree with it wholly. I mean, the dude should lose. I feel like he should go a total of 10 games without playing, which would mean the last 6 of this season, or now 5, and 4 games to start the next season. I mean, I don't think it's a career-ending move at all, just because, I mean, to end somebody's career. Now, if we're sitting here talking about a story that Mason Rudolph was severely injured because of that hit, or Mason Rudolph was, God forbid, killed because of that hit, of course, career ender. But through luck and through the portion of the helmet that hit his head being the most flexible part of the helmet, he didn't receive any injury, and we're thankful for that, obviously. But Myles Garrett is a buffoon, and he's a dummy for what he did, and he deserves everything that he's getting from the NFL right now.
Well, he's going to take a lot of damage from this. I mean, his reputation is completely ruined. He was this guy who was kind of this aloof dude who, seemed like kind of a thoughtful person, kind of a sensitive guy, a different dude. And then all it takes is this one moment. Well, not quite this one moment. We had a couple moments earlier this year where you could have questioned, well, does he have kind of a wild streak or whatever? But, in the game, in the moment, things happen. This wasn't that. This was something extra. And when it happened, I thought he would be a whole season, like 16 games, that he'd come back next year. And I don't think that would have been ridiculous. And I think you really need to take, when something happens like that, intent. Yeah. Regardless of what happened, whether Mason Rudolph got a concussion and missed a game, or whether he got killed, I really think you got to take intent into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll see. I think that I think 10 games to 16 games is really what
that's
we're
right.
looking at.
That's about right. I mean, it has to be a punishment severe enough to send a message to other players. And again, being out on the field, playing in the NFL for 7 years, I've seen helmets get ripped off. I've seen a few get ripped off, but it's like an unwritten rule. Like, there is, if you get into a fight in a practice, it's fine. This is football. Fights happen, disagreements on the field, or somebody feels they were hit too hard, or trash talking. Fights happen. They're allowed to actually kind of vent out their frustration for a moment before coaches and players quickly rush in, separate the players after the practice, over and done with. We're all family. We have fights, but it's done. When it's done, it's done, and there's nothing that goes on further. I've seen guys get their helmets pulled off. It's just an unwritten rule that once the helmet comes off, there is a new set of rules by which players will abide by at that very moment. The helmet is not a weapon, period. The helmet is not used. A lot of time, I mean, when we played against Buffalo back in 2010, helmet got ripped off. Defensive tackle for what was his name? Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams' helmet gets ripped off, and it gets thrown. Thrown like 5 or 10 yards away from any players. Of course, flags get thrown, but that's kind of like the etiquette of, if you get a helmet off, you toss the helmet. If one person loses their helmet, the other person's helmet usually has to come off. Because if they're going to fight, it's got to be even level. So a lot of times when you get one helmet come off, another one comes off with it. So there's now two people with no helmets on. And, and this is more so in training camp and more so in the practice atmosphere. If there's helmets on, technically punches are allowed. If there's no helmet on, then punches are not allowed. Once the helmets come off, you're not allowed to punch. So it's kind of a fight club etiquette for football players. And, that red line has always been, if the helmets come off, the helmets are out of play, period. You don't use them. I've never seen a guy get struck with a helmet before this Myles Garrett situation, because we all had that understanding. And regardless of what anybody on the Cleveland Browns says, you're defending your teammate, sure. But when the helmet gets swung, there's not really any more defending. It's like, let's get him the hell off the field, because now he's making the situation dangerous. And again, had he thrown that helmet into the stands in Cleveland, he would have had far more credibility, far more popularity from the people of Cleveland, because he just served them up a trophy, a battle trophy from the Steelers, the great Steelers-Cleveland rivalry. And now you have a situation where you probably get suspended for a game, maybe two. You get fined, absolutely. But that's it. But for him to think that it was okay to swing the helmet, I have no empathy or sympathy for any of the repercussions that come with that. So I think it's fair to say that we can all agree that Myles Garrett is, he's getting exactly what he deserves.
Yeah, and his teammates didn't back him up either.
Yeah, of course, you can't back him up.
That really showed me how serious it was, because from the outside, right, I've never seen that happen before in my life. It's equivalent to like a baseball player charging the mound and beating the pitcher with a bat, right? Yeah, that's what it feels like. And so I'd never seen it happen, but I'm not sure. But then I listened to all these post-game things. I see Baker Mayfield, who, say what you will about Baker, he rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Yeah. But he's like, yeah, there's no excuse for that. No one can act like that on the field. Like that. Like, there's a dude who ran from the cops in his flip-flops, got tackled, right? And he's saying that there's no excusing anything that dude just did. And that's how everybody was. Everybody said he can't do that. It's not just about hurting the team. It's about embarrassing and hurting other players. Because at the end of the day, Mason Rudolph is a fellow, NFL player.
Yeah, it's a fraternity.
As much as you hate him because he's a Steeler, which definitely that happens, at the same time, you're still part of the same union. You're still part of the same club. And that's just a total disrespect. Like, when is he going to go off on you? Yeah. Like, if he's that kind of uncontrollable person, are you comfortable around him in the locker room anymore? I think the answer for a lot of those guys is probably no.
Yeah. And we all know that when you're indefinitely suspended by the NFL, the only way to get back in is to kind of go through a process with Roger Goodell for reinstatement, right? And I'm wondering, and I'm kind of speculating here, that I would assume that they're probably going to make him take some kind of anger management class. I'm assuming they're probably going to have him do a psychological eval of some sort, because that it's a troubling sign that he did that. You wonder, is there anything going on, psychologically with him, or is there any kind of effect from, again, and this is the elephant in the room that they don't like to talk about in the NFL, but is that lashing out and that kind of impulsive behavior, is that going to be something you associate with CTE? Because he's a defensive end and he's played, his entire life playing football and getting knocked around and taking shots to the head. And at that position, it's a physical position, right? Like, defensive end, linebacker, fullback, running back, and to a degree, every other position as well, receiver. These guys who get knocked out crossing the middle on a 5-yard slant. These linebackers who fill gaps and go head on with fullbacks or head on with running backs, and defensive ends who are going up against tackles and are also making plays on the ball, whether it be on the quarterback or be on other players down the field. There's always collisions going on. So what is it that kind of set this guy off and it seems so calm, which to me, in a way, I feel like he had to have been thinking about what he wanted to do with the helmet in order to, and then just came to the reaction of, well, he's trying to rush at me, so I'm just going to bop him over. That doesn't even make sense in my head, but it's like, what the hell was he thinking? Like, that's where I look at it and I say there's got to be something that the NFL is going to have him go through in order to prove that he has made some kind of change in his life in order to get back into the NFL or get back into playing position to get back, to play next season. But we'll see how that plays out. At the end of the day, we all know the facts. We all know what happened. And for him to bring up this new element out of nowhere is just not something anybody's going to believe. But I think
Mason Rudolph, just real quick, Mason Rudolph did come forward and say, I do accept some culpability in what happened. I shouldn't have reacted the way I did. But then it's been reported ever since this news came out that he's like completely shocked and devastated that he was been accused of something like that. I saw that on ESPN pretty much as soon as
that might be a little bit of an exaggeration in and of itself as well, but I can understand him feeling. I can understand him feeling absolutely disrespected by that because he's got teammates, and those teammates know who he is, and obviously, we've never heard any kind of There's never been any history of Mason Rudolph, saying anything in that realm of discussion, as far as I know. And so, why would we believe that he's just now all of a sudden this racist guy who calls black people racial slurs on the field and then gets beat up for it? Like, hey, come on, nobody's doing that, dude. Nobody's believing that.
Dookie12 in the chat says, y'all talking about Jussie Garrett?
Yeah. Y'all talking about Jussie Garrett. It's Jussie Garrett.
Garrett, that's perfect.
You got to put that French spin at the end. Jussie Garrett. Yeah, this guy, again, man, like we keep saying, it just doesn't make sense. The situation didn't make sense, and his response to the situation now with this appeal doesn't make sense. So, we'll see how that plays out. But moving on from that, Colin Kaepernick, I know that's like a trigger word now across the entire sports world. Colin Kaepernick, and I did a video on this over the weekend when the situation, broke. But Colin Kaepernick, just an unbelievable, and quite befuddling situation as to what the hell his mind state was and why, he disregarded the NFL's workout that had 25 teams with representatives at the Atlanta Falcons training facility this past Saturday to get a look at him and see if he still has what it takes to play ball. And
see, I wasn't confused. I wasn't confused or shocked at all. I think that this dude, it's very clear to me that he feels like he has much more value in being able to be a victim than being able to go and be a very mediocre quarterback for someone. And in a sense, he's probably right. He's getting a lot of attention. He still has endorsement deals. He still has people standing up for him. I think that's going to start to dwindle out. You saw Stephen A. absolutely crush the man, deservedly so.
But Stephen A. is also getting a lot of backlash for the things he said. And I saw that. I saw what he said. And to be honest, and just to kind of fill people in who may not necessarily be all the way queued up on what's going on with the Colin Kaepernick thing. Colin Kaepernick ditched the NFL when they set up a workout for him, citing stipulations that were in the waiver, the liability waiver contract that they gave. The NFL said that it was a standard waiver. Technically, it was not. There was literally one extra line of verbiage that was added into the waiver stating that if you don't, basically in a gist, it was saying if you don't get signed, you can't sue us for collusion, which basically means if we don't sign you to a team, you can't go back to a court and say, oh, they all worked against me being able to get signed by a team to make sure that I couldn't get back in the NFL. And, look, I've talked to a number of my old teammates. I've talked to a couple of guys who are still playing right now, one of them being a high-profile guy. And look, and this is kind of, it's hard to explain this because it's kind of a football mentality. I mean, I can say it and people will know what I'm talking about, but how many people would give their right arm to be in the situation that you were in on Saturday? That's what it boils down to. How many players have been out of the NFL for 3 years? How many of them have ever gotten a chance after 3 years to get back into the NFL?
To have 25 teams come to them.
And have 25 teams come to them. Me and three of my former offensive linemen, who we all have a group chat that we talk in almost every day. Just like, I mean, I'll have like 40 or 50 text messages, and it's just conversations we're talking about, things going on. And the Kaepernick situation came up, obviously, when it happened. And we were all talking about, dude, you had 25 teams. Who cares what the waiver says? If you still have what it takes to play in this league, if you still have the arm, if you still have the reflexes, if you still have the agility and the ability, go to the workout. Do the workout. If 3 years after, if being out of football for 3 years, the NFL gave any one of us a call and said, we have 25 teams who are ready to come see you work out in 4 hours. Can you get to the parking lot at Walmart off 85 and do a workout for us? We're going to be there. If we're ready, if we're in shape, if we've been training, we've been ready like he says he has, give me any time, any place, anywhere, under any condition, and with any stipulations, and we'll get it done. Because at the end of the day, if he really wanted to win in the court of public opinion, you go do that workout. Silently, you do it. You don't, I mean, come on. He said he wanted a camera crew there. There's never been a camera crew allowed to film any player's workout who's trying to get signed by a team in the NFL. You have the Combine. The Combine is an actual media event that is specifically tailored for television. But outside of that, you will never see film of a player going to work out at any facility in hopes of being signed. And in this situation, he wants that to be a condition that is adhered to by the NFL. There's no way. The NFL will never do that. The NFL set up for film. They set up for trainers. They set up for everything you need. Everything he would have gotten at the Combine, he was going to get there. Everything he would have gotten at any workout with any one team, he was going to get there. They were going to have it set up for him, and he would be able to go in, get the workout done, and they would send the film to all 32 teams. He look, I don't know who his team is. I don't know who his camp is. But at the end of the day, they don't understand football culture. Football culture dictates that when you have an opportunity, and these opportunities are rare, this is the rarest of the rarest opportunities, you take it and you let your ability and you let your game do the talking. At the end of the day, if the NFL decide, if these 25 teams or all 32 teams decided that nobody was going to sign this guy, then you can come out and win the war in the court of public opinion by releasing the footage of your workout yourself, because you would have it at that point. Every team in the NFL would have it. You would have it. Release the footage. Say, this was my workout. This is what I did for the NFL. I played their game, and they still shut me out. You can't sue them, but the people would be behind you. What he did on Saturday, it made him seem like Stephen A. Smith was right. He wanted to be a martyr. He wanted to be some kind of symbol. He wanted to be something. Look, have you seen the shoes that Nike's given this guy? And look, I don't knock Nike's hustle, because Nike is, for all intents and purposes, they're a business. They know that this is something that has skyrocketed their value as a company, having a Kaepernick campaign going on, and they're going to continue to do it until it shows otherwise. I have no problem with that. And I honestly have no problem with what Kaepernick is trying to bring light to. But I just feel like when you do something like this, the way that he did it with the NFL, the last minute switch, the wearing a Kunta Kinte t-shirt, dude, you're not even African. You're not even black. You're mixed. And you're wearing a Kunta Kinte t-shirt. And you go out there and you grandstand after the workout and tell people how much the NFL is running. All it does is cheapen everything that you claim to be working towards as an individual 100%. It makes it made me, I mean, dude, look, and this will probably be the only time that I really give my opinion about how I felt about the entire national anthem situation. I felt like Kaepernick I felt like his actions were just. I felt like it was. I also feel like, football culture. That is unacceptable, what you did. Not because people don't agree with you, but because you have now created something completely new that is going to be a subject, a topic that will be discussed, and a topic that will have an effect on the NFL's ability to operate. And the NFL does not play games about their business. The Shield. I've sat in a room, in a team meeting room in Jacksonville with Roger Goodell in that room talking to all of us players and emphasizing, if you knew how many times he used the word protecting that shield, then you would understand that the NFL does not play when it comes to that shield. The NFL will fight tooth and nail to preserve every bit of that brand that they've built over the last 100 years. And when you put that in jeopardy by injecting a political matter, or not even a political matter, a social matter of that nature, something, and again, had he done this 10 years ago, he would have got released, or he would have not re-signed, and you would have never heard another thing about Colin Kaepernick, because the climate it was a perfect storm of the climate of the country, the climate of politics, and Colin Kaepernick merging both of those things and bringing them into one of the sacred realms in American society, and that is football, the national pastime. You bring that into that realm of existence, and it set the entire league ablaze. Now, again, I actually agreed with his position. I agreed with him kneeling for that reason, not in disrespect to the flag, not in disrespect to the national anthem, because I don't think it was ever about that. I think that was just the only opportunity that he felt it could actually have weight, because people will look at that, and there will be people who will say he's disrespecting the flag, he's disrespecting the national anthem. But it also starts that debate. People start to talk about, well, what is he says he's kneeling for this, but let's look at what he's kneeling for. Why is he kneeling? That I have no issue with. I feel like that's fine. And I feel like reactions will always be fiery to start. And once that fire calms down, people can have a conversation and you can move forward. But for him to now try and set himself up as this martyr and set the NFL up as this ultimate villain, you can't win that battle, because you can't sit here and say you want to be back in football, but then try and call out 32 teams with 32 owners. All you've done is shut the door on any possibility that you'll ever play in this league again. And for me, and for a lot of players out there, and this is why you don't hear players talking about it so much. You don't hear active players talking about it. You don't hear players in the commentary realm talking about it, because we all know what the deal is. You got a chance, and that was your chance to go in there and get back in the league. If you really want to play football, you would have shut the hell up. You would have went in there for 2 hours, got a workout in, did everything that you say you've been preparing to do for 3 years. You would have got out, and then once you're done and it's behind you, you can start talking again and start talking about what you want to do. You can become that same symbol as a player working in the communities, the same way that all of us players do in our careers. We go and we visit kids at hospitals. We donate money. We donate food. We take people, we donate Christmas gifts. We do all these things for people in the community, and we don't ask for, recognition. We don't ask for a spotlight to be put on us because of it. It is part of our contractual agreement with the team, but our job, or our position as role models in the NFL, is something that is thrust on us, but we do it because we're helping the community. We're representing our city. We're representing the people who are behind us and the people who support us on Sundays, people who come to our practices during training camp. But Colin Kaepernick to come out there and put himself above all of that and say the NFL is running, say the NFL they need to step up. We've been ready. We'll continue to be ready. You weren't ready when they had a workout for you. You weren't ready when they had a facility open privately just for you. You weren't ready. And so with that, we don't want to hear about it no more. Players do not have your back in that respect because you passed it up. And then you tried to slap the NFL in the face with it. And the people that are supporting you and the people that are behind you in your camp, all those people are behind you, I feel, for their own benefit, for their own ability to ride that wave and try and get themselves in the history books. But at the end of the day, in 12 months, when nobody is talking about this shit anymore, because I guarantee you, in 12 months, it's over with. Nobody's going to talk. Nobody will care. Nobody cares. Almost everybody doesn't care now. But in 12 months, no one will care. And when that time comes and those people who were part of that team start to disperse, then he's going to regret it. Because at the end of the day, his fad and his phase as that martyr will have passed, and the next one will come up along in some other realm of society that people will get behind and swear that this is the new movement. So only thing he's done is solidify that he'll never have a career as a professional football player again. But even worse, he is going to have that regret that, I don't know, from a football standpoint, when you had the opportunity to get back to what you say you love, you didn't do it, which in our eyes means you don't love it that much. And if that's the case, so be it.
Yeah, and well said. That was a pretty good little rant there. But and you know, for me, who I would consider myself part of the anti-Kaepernick team, not against him personally, but I was very much with the NFL in terms of his lawsuit, his collusion lawsuit, because I'm looking at a guy who, do I think he's better than a lot of backups and maybe a few starters in the NFL? Yes. Do I think it's worth bringing someone like that in, who is proven over and over again, just like we saw again? This is indisputable now. There are people that will stand with Kaepernick no matter what, like you said, because of their own reasons. Those people will continue to stay staunchly in his camp. However, everyone that was in the middle is now going to fall over to the side of, yeah, this dude is too much of a headache. I can't imagine bringing someone like that into my business that would bring that kind of distraction, that kind of agenda, and that kind of ego into play. And so to me, it's funny, and I'm loving it. I'm loving the fact that he did this to himself. It's so transparent. When you see him go from the Atlanta Falcons workout facility to some freaking high school, he's sitting there spending most of his time like posing for pictures because they're filming some documentary, right? And then he comes out and does this fake shit. I don't understand why this happened to begin with, why this workout ever happened. The NFL has settled with Kaepernick on the collusion thing because they tried to get him out of their hair. I don't know why they decided to offer him this opportunity. Maybe it was to let it blow up in his face, and it fucking did.
Well, there's some speculation, or not speculation. I actually think it's come out that Jay-Z was a big part of why they did this workout. But I agree with you. I agree with everything you're saying about why did this workout happen the way it did? Why was it scheduled for a Saturday? See, at the beginning of this entire situation, I felt like the NFL was kind of running a little publicity or running a little stunt. I felt like they were running a stunt. They were trying to get this out of the way so that they can say, hey, we gave him a shot. It's up to the teams at that point, but we gave him a shot. And a lot of that had to do with Jay-Z. But, at that point, he had the leverage. Colin had the leverage of why are they doing this on a Saturday when most teams do player workouts on Tuesdays? Can we do it a couple of Saturdays from now so that we can be better prepared? No. All the answers to those were no. They wouldn't allow him to know who was coming to it. They basically, kept the information to themselves about everything outside of when and where, which was fishy at the start. But he turned all of that around. He turned it all around and put the entire perception of a publicity stunt on himself, which That's hustling backwards. You don't do it like that. You let them, they already set up their bed to lay in, and you let them lay in it. But you went ahead, you took the sheets off the bed, put new ones on, and you jumped in the bed, and now you look like the fool. I really think that if the NFL was trying to, I don't believe they were necessarily working in the best of faith, but at the same time, if you want to play football in their league, then you are going to have to play by their rules. That is just that's the mantra of the day in business, in sports, anything.
Any job, any professional job.
Anywhere.
You can't just smoke crack because you want to, right?
Yeah.
Like there are rules.
There are rules.
And what I think was happening with the NFL, and the reason they were holding it so close to the vest, was because they knew what would happen if if all the teams that weren't going to be there got released. Mm-hmm. You would have had Colin Kaepernick and his goon squad putting all this pressure on social media, on all these channels, trying to spin the narrative that these people just aren't interested in Colin Kaepernick because this, and this. Mm-hmm. That's why they didn't want it out there. That makes complete sense to me. Yeah.
And I mean, again, you look at it and you say the NFL was trying to control the narrative. They were trying to keep control of the narrative. That's what that's what they do. NFL is going, anything that has their name on it, they're going to make sure they have complete control of how that is perceived. And again, that kind of goes into they weren't necessarily working in the best of the most goodwill with this workout, but at the same time, they did get confirmed 25 out of 32 teams would attend. And if you notice, a few of the teams that weren't going to be there have come out, and these were teams that didn't need quarterbacks, so they didn't attend. You had Seattle's head coach Pete Carroll already came out and said that they were there. Jerry Jones said that they weren't there and they weren't going because obviously Jerry has his opinion about the situation, but also they got a quarterback. They're good. They got a quarterback and they got a backup. Then they've been there and they have a consistency at the position. So of course they're not necessarily going to go check that out. But again, they didn't get that information out, like you said, because they wanted to keep control of that narrative. But also at the same time, as soon as Kaepernick pulled that stunt, he may have captured the narrative, but it was in the worst kind of way. You come out in front of these cameras and you start grandstanding. You go out and throw these balls. You got your own receivers. You did your own workout at a high school that is named after an African-American doctor who was a pioneer in the blood plasma preservation techniques that were used during World War II, which, coincidence? No, that was done for a reason. There's plenty of high schools near Flowery Branch, but you take all these teams, you want all these teams to follow you 60 miles south. 60 miles south. Now, I'm in Atlanta. Flowery Branch is a 40-minute drive north of Atlanta. Where he worked out was Riverdale, which is south of Atlanta. From Flowery Branch to Riverdale is quite literally a 2.5 hour ride at any point of the day in the city of Atlanta, simply because of the untenable traffic situation that Atlanta has to work with on a day. It doesn't matter if it's a Sunday on Christmas. You go out on the streets of Atlanta, you go out on the interstate in the Atlanta area, and to go 10 miles, it's a 35 to 40-minute trout just because there's so many cars and so much traffic. And there's always traffic because there are vehicles passing, going into different states. All the truck routes are going through Atlanta. I mean, it's unbelievable. So you're asking all of these 25 different representatives from different teams who all hustled their asses down to Atlanta to begin with on short notice. Everyone agrees that it was short notice and they were confused with it. The teams were confused. Kaepernick's team was confused. But, they ended up getting 25 teams there. These guys get there, get to Atlanta Airport. From Atlanta Airport to Flowery Branch is an hour and a half. So you got to drive an hour and a half to go up to Flowery Branch north, on a Saturday, which is the same as a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday as far as traffic is concerned. And once they get there, you change you flip the script. And what was it, half an hour before the workout or an hour or so before the workout, he decides we're going to a high school 50 miles south. I mean, you only had 8 people at that. You only had 8 NFL teams at that, because at that point, everybody kind of threw their hands up. Like, no, we're not doing this. We're not going to follow you all the way back to where we just came from, past where we just came from, to go watch you work out when we all were ready and set up to watch you here. So, I understand what he's trying to do. I get it. But at the same time, dude, you don't want to play football if this is how you're going to treat a situation where, by all intents and purposes, there was an opportunity, regardless of, and that right there, Blaine Gabbert was my quarterback in Jacksonville my last year, just to let everybody know. So, but Colin Kaepernick just set himself up, and in my video, I used the word, or I used the SJW title and placed it on Kaepernick, because you allowed these SJWs to manipulate your decision making, and now you're digging yourself in a deeper and deeper hole in your life because you think that this is really going to make you somebody who's going to be put in the history books. And hey, you may be, but at the end of the day, that still is not going to help you in any kind of ability to get a job as a football player again. He doesn't give a shit about that. Like, I don't think he does.
He just doesn't, and it really makes me wonder now. All the things we knew that he was close to getting an offer from the Ravens, I think it was. And then him and his girlfriend spout their mouths off about slavery.
His girlfriend did. His girlfriend buried it. Ray Lewis ripped him for that.
Exactly.
Ray Lewis ripped him because it's like, dude, why is your girl, when we literally are having a conversation about bringing you to the Baltimore Ravens, like we're on the verge of offering you a deal, and you allow your girlfriend, who is a super SJW, to spout off at the mouth and call, and I don't remember exactly what she said. Maybe you can pull it up. But
it was something about calling the owners slavers.
A slaver, something like that. Something to that effect, that the owners were slavers, and that the owner, and as the Baltimore Ravens owner is actually with Ray Lewis talking about signing Kaepernick. And look, again, Ray Lewis after that, hey, throw his hands up, backed away. Like Homer does on the little meme, backed right back through the bushes. Like, no, not me, not today.
So much has been done for this guy by a lot of people who, just like you said, they understand where he's coming from, and they've tried to help him, like Ray Lewis. And it makes me wonder if all of this was a ploy. Once he realized the situation was he's the one that freaking opted out of San Francisco. Yeah. Like, he's the one that opted out of his contract. He's the one that got millions of dollars from the NFL because of this collusion thing, without having to play it down on the field and still maintain his victim card. Like, it makes me wonder if all of this, the entire time, it's never been about football ever since that point that he opted out. And that's what I think. I think the dude is an absolute joke. I don't think he really believes a whole lot of what he's spouting. I think he's just benefiting greatly from it. And we'll see where it goes.
I agree with the part of, it doesn't seem as, I don't know, man. I gave this dude so much benefit of the doubt for so long because I know how the NFL is. Whether it was this situation or, anything that has to do with having an opinion out to the public and standing by your opinion, the NFL has always been very wishy-washy about players who do that, because it just adds another element into it injects a bit of angst into the brand. And I gave him the benefit of the doubt for so long. But, with this, when I watch him, and now when I watch him talk, when I watched him, give that little speech after the workout, I didn't feel any kind of genuine, any kind of real, genuine attitude of him feeling as if he'd been wronged and he wanted the NFL to hold themselves to account. It just seemed like a publicity stunt. It seemed like he was faking it, and I was like, "What are you doing? You sound stupid." I mean, and it feels just disingenuous.
Dude, it makes you look back. This is what I've thought all along. It makes you look back at wearing the Castro shirt, at wearing the pig socks, and how much of that was planned to
influenced by people in a circle who tell him, "Do this, do this." You're this generation's Malcolm X. What? I saw a meme. I think it was yesterday. I saw a meme. It was from a comedian, but he said the meme was a picture of Malcolm X's body with Kaepernick's head very nicely photoshopped on top of it, and it said, "This is who I'm going to tell my kids Malcolm X was when they get older." But he was clearly making a joke. But it's just that whole Kaepernick is chasing that kind of image of someone like a Malcolm X. And he's doing these provocative things like wearing the Castro shirt, like wearing the pig socks. Like, look, I don't think there's another player in the NFL who would have did what he did with the pig socks. I just don't. Not because there's not a problem with necessarily police brutality, not because there's not a problem with how some police operate, but at the end of the day, we all know the worst of our culture, the worst of our society is the smallest percentage of our society. It's not the majority. And yes, there are police out there who do some really crappy things and do some really messed up things. And a lot of times it does have to do with a power, a person being in a position of authority over people who are not in a position to really have a voice and fight back. But that's a very small minority. Even if they added up to be 10 or 20 or 30,000 police officers, that's still a very small minority around the country in law enforcement in general. So, that's like saying that, all black guys are I don't know what's the stereotype these days? Like we're all like
I don't want to get in trouble.
Well, but you know what I'm saying? Like you can't associate a stereotype.
Ooh, I got one. All black guys are getting into fights over Popeye's chicken sandwiches. That's what's going on right now.
Black guys will stab you over a chicken sandwich from Popeyes. Like, yeah, one black guy stabs somebody over a chicken sandwich at Popeyes, but the majority of us are not going to do that. And again, like I said, you didn't hear a lot of players talk about necessarily supporting his individual actions post kneeling. The kneeling was supported pretty heavily because of the climate of the situation in the country with police officers at that time. It was I think we can agree that it was at that particular time, it was hitting a boiling point because there was just video footage every other week. So yes, it became a national topic of discussion. But outside of that kneeling gesture, I think when he started doing the things with the shirts and the socks and the calling out, I've met Colin Kaepernick a few times. I met him a couple times in Vegas, and he wasn't that kind of guy when I met him, and that was before the kneeling. He was not that dude. He was not that guy who was so heavily concerned about what was going on in other people's lives, or what was going on with police and how they're treating people. And I'm not saying that you can't have a change of, or I'm not saying you can't be influenced and inspired by a situation, but I never felt like he was very socially up to par on many things at all.
Maybe it's because he was brought up by that rich white family. Maybe he had like internalized white guilt or something. Maybe that's what's going on. Maybe he just finally discovered, all the injustices that he just had to fight for.
And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, fine, you did. But how do you help the situation by wearing socks that have police officers as pigs? How does that help anything?
How does that help the climate? Exactly. Yeah. And it only helps one person. and that's Colin freaking Kaepernick.
All
And
it
that's
does-
always been my issue with him.
Exactly. It brings a light on you, and it brings a circus to the team you play for. And what was the record that year? Wasn't very good.
No idea.
Well, I think that his last 12 games, he was 1-11. So we know how good he was. Well, let's look at some of these questions here in the chat. And again, if anybody has questions about this, anybody wants to interject anything into this, please feel free to do so in the chat. We have here, let's see, I just saw one that I wanted to pull up. Where is that? I'm looking for a question mark right now. Damn, I can't find. Oh, that's not it. Oh, here we go. DC 8091. Either way, what are the chances he'd pick up an NFL team's playbook mid-season? And just to quickly answer that, the NFL is a copycat league, and 45 to 55% of all NFL playbooks have the exact same plays in them. It's just the verbiage of what they identify certain things as within the play that are different. That's what, if you're a vet, like for me, as an offensive lineman, I was in Jacksonville 7 years, and I went to Dallas for my last year, and, their protections, all of their base protections were the same as ours. A few of them were tagged on with a couple of different terms that kind of identified left or right direction, but the basic stuff generally had the same fundamental verbiage, fundamental basics on how they call the plays. But I don't think that it's such a huge deal for a player who's been in the system, any one system or any multiple systems for any amount of time in the NFL to necessarily catch on to that. That's more of a younger player thing, having to find out or having to understand the playbook. When you're a vet, after the second or third year, that light kind of snaps on, and you start to understand and categorize and compartmentalize all the different parts of the playbook, and so those things don't necessarily change when you move around teams. So I don't think it would have been anything totally hard for him to figure out, but it's still there's still a learning curve. It's just not a very big one for veterans.
Yeah, and really, like the people that have like super complex stuff that you would have an issue with would really only be people that have been together a really long time, right? Yeah, if someone who's come in, Sean Payton and Drew Brees, and all of a sudden expected to be the backup quarterback there, they really have to bring things down to kind of work them in there. But anywhere else that's actually looking for a quarterback, they're probably going to be doing pretty basic stuff.
Yeah. The systems that are like custom tailored, like you said, Peyton, Brady, those systems are kind of customized and tailored specifically for that coordinator, that quarterback, and that head coach. So those would be harder. I actually did a workout in New Orleans, and it was I don't remember. That was like right before I was like, yeah, I'm done. I don't remember what the hell none of their plays were, but Dirk Cutter, who was the head coach in Tampa Bay for a few years, Dirk Cutter was my offensive coordinator my first 6 years in the NFL. And I was actually, before I went to Dallas, the Falcons, who he was the offensive coordinator of, they were going to give me a 3-year deal before the head coach, Mike Smith, and the general manager had a falling out, which they literally had a falling out partially over signing me. But I can tell you to this day all of the plays out of his playbook. I know every call, every blocking scheme, every play call, every concept. I to this day, it is ingrained in my head. And I actually, I still have all of my notebooks full of my notes. I have like 10 notebooks, 12 notebooks in a box in the closet here that literally are just notes from every season, every game, all the plays, training camp, everything drawn up. It's like the back of my hand. But I forget where we were going with that. But let's look into the chat and see what else is in here. Let's see here.
Somebody says
Somebody
Disney are the only slavers left. Yeah,
Disney are the only slavers left. Yeah. Let's see here. Who else? Okay, Daniel Kudela says Garrett will start week 1. The league is only saying indefinite because it sounds more severe. It's clear. It clearly violates the CBA. So now Myles has to decide on a Tom Brady injunction. I'm not sure what you mean by it clearly violates the CBA. Have you read the CBA? Because the CBA is a pretty thick book.
We've seen Ray Rice get indefinite suspensions. I mean,
indefinite suspension basically means you're done for. I mean, and usually these things are handed out either before or right after the season. So in his case, indefinite would mean generally you cannot come back to play until you're approved to come back to play. Doesn't mean any number of games, but because of at the point of the season that this situation with Myles Garrett happened, a 6-game ban, that's not enough. And the NFL knows that. Myles Garrett knows that. He'll be banned. He won't get, people don't understand. This guy's not going to get paid until possibly week 4 of the 2020 season. And he's lucky it was a first-round pick, because I remember after my first year, after my rookie year, dude, what? I made it to training camp the next year with like $1,200 in my bank account. I was like, oh my God. Training camp came and I was like, yes, no more spending money, no more. I was counting the days until training camp going into my second year in the NFL, because after taxes, everything that it says on TV, everything that you see as far as players pay, that's before taxes. And the tax bracket that you're in when you're in the NFL is the top tax bracket. So 43% in total is what comes out of every single paycheck. So, and
you're only getting it for like
17 weeks.
Yeah, it's a little bit, just a little portion of the month or of the year. So you must have not listened when they brought all those guys in that are like, all right, take care of your money now, kids, when you get in the NFL.
Man, I left. I got out of my rookie year going into the offseason with like, what was it? If I remember it correctly, I think I went into the offseason with like under 200,000. Under 200,000. I think it was like 160, 180,000. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, because I'm a rookie. And
you're like, I'm like, rich, bitch.
I'm like, motherfucker, I'm here. Yeah. And then I'm like, we still get paid in the offseason, right? And they're like, no. I was like, what? We don't get paid in the offseason. When do we get paid again? First game of next season. I'm like, oh, dude. But it's still, I'm thinking, oh, I'm rich. I got good money here. I'm good. It was like 4 days until training camp, and I'm like, yo, if this payment hits my account by tomorrow, I ain't gonna have no bread. I'm not gonna have $1. I'm gonna be broke going into training camp. And it's real though, because at the end of the day, dude, like I'm 20. What was I? I was 23 years old. I didn't understand a damn thing really about how to manage money at all. So I blew it. I blew all that money. I didn't care. I was like, yeah, it's $5,000 here. I went to Miami and spent $5,000 in 2 days and was like, I might have just broke myself. But, not knowing that, eventually I would be getting a way bigger deal. But, that was a lot of money. I was like, whoo, $5,000 in 2 days. Damn, wonder how I'm gonna make it through the off season. But yeah, dude, I went into training camp and was so freaking grateful that there was free food.
Man.
That I didn't have to spend no money. I was like, oh my God, my bank account can finally chill because I can just go. I'm gonna be in training camp for a month. Not gonna have any kind of here we got a super chat here. Ryan or RC from NYC. Uche, Ryan, I'm heading home. Great seeing you, RC. You've always been very consistent and being in on my videos. I really appreciate you. Hope you had a great work day, had a great Thursday. We'll catch you on the next stream. So we appreciate RC from NYC.
Yeah, he's awesome, man. He's over on my channel all the time. He sent me he actually sent me this awesome Cubs hat because he knows I'm a big Cubs fan. And he sent me he's a big Yankees fan. So he sent me a Yankees cap with Padres colors because I'm here in San Diego. So it was really cool, man. Always good seeing you.
Yeah. Always good seeing RC. He's a good dude. We really love him. But yeah, it's hard to get through that offseason, dude. I have lent players who made more money than me. In my time in the NFL, I had lent players money, with a month to go to training camp. Like I'd lent guys $50,000-$60,000 because this is like a 5-year guy he ain't got a dime. He got nothing going into training camp, and I'm like, dude, you made like $3 million last year. How you ain't got nothing to go in? But people, you got to understand at the same time, that money comes and goes just as quick as you get it. Because your life, everything is relative. Your lifestyle matches the money you have the majority of the times. Yeah. So people will say, hey, you guys make so much money. I'm like, do you know how much I pay monthly in bills? My monthly bills, at the time when I was, when I got my big contract, my monthly bills were like $12,000, $13,000 a month total to pay everything, to have a clean month with nothing to pay for. So it's relative, house property payments, $10,000 a year. Like people, that money can chip away and go quickly. So it's never there's always more to it than just guys blew their money. Yeah, you blow some money. You give somebody $1 million, they'll blow 20% of it on useless shit. Hell, it's a status thing, right? I mean, you're sitting there as a young guy coming in the league with these veterans who maybe have built up a little more and they're living a certain lifestyle. And it's tough to be in that locker room with them and not want to be a part of that, of that crew. So I get it. No, absolutely. You're right. Anything else in the chat? See what else is going on here in the chat. Here we go. Hardest part about being rich is staying rich. Damn right. That's what you got to, and one thing that I learned as I got older in the NFL, and when I say older, I mean after the first year of my big contract, I learned that, at the end of the day, you got to have a nest egg. Like you got to have a large amount of money in accounts that you have no real access to without people signing paperwork. And because that's an inconvenience, you won't go after that money. So you keep money here on one side that you can spend, and then you keep the rest of it in something that you have to have I have to have 3 signatures to get access to the mass majority of the money that I have. So it's hard too. It's hard because, even for me now, I live on a budget. I get a monthly amount of money and that is it. And I can't ask for more money to be put in until the 1st. So it's, there are some times when, I'm gonna buy this. I want to buy this new graphics card for my computer, and I'm just like, wait, that's like $1,200. That's gonna put me tight. We're only halfway through the month. Don't do it yet. Just wait. You got to protect yourself from yourself. You got to protect yourself from yourself. That happens with that. That's a true statement for people who are trying to maintain the money they have, maintain their wealth. Let's see here. Nick Wilson. It is so much out of the question for Myles to just – is it so much out of the question for Myles to just get a warehouse job for the year? Woo! Look, it's hard to tell somebody who's only played football their whole life to go get a 9-to-5. We don't even know what a 9-to-5 really is. Like, I thought about that when I retired. And, and I'm not knocking anybody who's got a 9-to-5. I mean, shit, man, we do what we got to do to live our lives and keep it moving. But when you play football your entire life, like this is one of the things that football kind of this is the negative side of it that you don't hear much about. football doesn't allow for you to have a life in any traditional sense from high school till college till you finish playing in the NFL if you make it to the NFL. So it's hard to really perceive what it is to have a regular job because I've never had a job. I've never had a job outside of football. I never worked at McDonald's. Oh, no, I'm lying. I worked at McDonald's for 2 weeks when I was 16. That's the only job I've ever had before it was about football. So it's really hard for me to look at going in somewhere at 9 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock or, clocking in and clocking out because my job that I've had my entire life never worked like that. Now, it was still structured. It was still routine. It was still, there were still responsibilities. But, obviously, I'm playing a sport. So it's hard for athletes to really transition and find what a regular job can do for their lives or where they can fit a regular job into their lives that they don't, necessarily lose interest in almost immediately. Like the majority of all of us in football have ADD. We got attention deficit. There's a ton of players who take Adderall in the NFL. Ton of players because that's just kind of how things play out. We're always
like the whole Legion of Boom secondary, right?
Man, all that. What, man? I know that Vyvanse made me a better football player. Vyvanse made me a better football player in ways that I could never imagine that it could have done prior to really, to taking it because I had been prescribed it when I was in Adderall when I was in college. I was diagnosed with ADD when I was in middle school. My parents didn't allow me to take any prescriptions for it. But you fast forward to the NFL and, the NFL puts you through a very stringent, very technical test and evaluation to make sure that you to get an exemption to use Adderall. Like you have to prove like they will know that you have ADD. Like there's no doubt about it. And dude, the first day that I took it and went out to practice, it was like, you remember the one movie with Bradley Cooper where he takes the pill and it makes him like smarter?
Unlimited or something like that.
Yeah. Limitless.
Yeah.
Dude, it was like that on the field. I'm seeing things in ways that I didn't see them before. I'm focused in on the play and every aspect of the play to a level that I just could not maintain prior to that. Just, there's somewhat a little bit of cloudiness. There would always be a little bit of cloudiness in my head prior to taking Vyvanse when I would be out on the field, kind of a second guessing at times, in my first few years in the league. But, it was midway through before my third year in the league when I started taking it. And dude, when I was in practice, I was just like, wow, this is all so easy now. Like everything is so easy to understand. It's so easy to see when blitzes are coming. And I'll never forget, we were playing the Houston Texans. And I was calling out their blitzes to our center and to our tackle before they ran the play. Before we ran our plays, I'd be like, hey, dog blitz, saw blitz. Like,
they were looking at you. They're like, what the hell what's going on?
As they're getting in position to run the blitz, and then we're adjusting and making our calls to adjust to the blitz. And it does add for players who do genuinely have attention deficit disorder. It does benefit us to be able to concentrate and focus on the field in the classroom, because a lot of it is really the classroom. Like, dude, I would fall asleep mid-meeting. Like, and it was one of those sleeps where I'm having a dream while I'm sitting straight up at the front of the meeting room with the lights off, in front of the projector screen where we got practice plays running, and it's me and one of my teammates sitting right next to me. We're boys, so he's sitting there like this, looking at his phone, texting and shit, and I'm sitting there like this, just sitting straight up asleep. And I hear, and I'm like, dude, I am out. I didn't even realize that I was this out. But as I'm sitting there, sitting straight up asleep, having a dream, I hear our O-line coach, Andy Heck, who you got on this play, Uche? Like, who's the identified linebacker? Who am I going to be blocking on this play? He says that in the dream, and I just open my eyes, look up, got 54. Oh, good job, Uche. Good job. And I turned and looked just slightly behind to the rest of the O-line room. Our 14-year veteran center, Brad Meester, is looking at me like this. And he looks to the lineman next to him, like, Uche was fucking sleeping, wasn't he? It's like, yeah. Like, and we leave in the meeting room. Andy's our coach has already walked out. And Brad Meester, he's kind of standing by the door. He's like, Uche, were you fucking sleeping? I was like, yeah, I was. He's like, how did you do that? I said, I just heard Andy's voice in my sleep and opened my eyes. Luckily, he had the play frozen at the very beginning of the play, so the formation was clear to see. And, and this is like what, my fifth year? So I've got the offense down. So I know where, because I played center and guard. I started left guard my second year, but I also played center. And I started right guard from my third year all the way through. But I always was also the backup center. So I knew how to make calls. I knew how to operate the offense on the line. And I just opened my eyes literally, and it was already set up. So I knew exactly. He said, if I remember correctly, he said, "Who do you got on this? Who do you got on this protection, Uche?" When I opened my eyes, and I just heard the protection and was like, "Tujet, that guy." He's like, "Yeah, good job," and I'm just like, whoo, back to sleep.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's those ones where you're fighting sleep. You're not trying to sleep. You're happening to fall asleep, and like every couple seconds you like wake up and you're like, all right, back in it. And then all of a sudden someone says your name and you're like, I remember what's going on.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Had he never said my name, I probably would have sat there like that just for a while in that little kind of moonlight sleep where you're kind of in the haze of sleep but not fully knocked out. Because that's what we would do, dude. We would. I mean, we're in there at 6 a.m. It's like I was still asleep when I got to the building. But there have been. I mean, dude, and I know we've gotten off course here, but it's always fun for me to talk about the stories of the ridiculous things that happen in the locker room, in the meeting rooms that nobody knows about. My rookie year, I got cussed out by that same offensive line coach because my rookie year, and I think this was during training camp, and all the rookies had to sit up, all the rookie linemen had to sit in these fold-out chairs against the wall, which was utter garbage because all of the veterans got to sit in these nice executive chairs like the one I'm in now. We're just rocking back and forth and feeling good. And we're the foot mats of the offensive line, so we don't get to, we don't have a say in anything, and we just got to find a way. And my rookie year, I'm sitting in the meeting room, and I'm like up against the wall, and I mean, Andy has a clear line of sight to me in the meeting room because our meeting room is just a big room, tables, and then the projector in the front. Andy sits in the very back by the door, operating the computer, looking at the film. I am literally in his line of sight easily, and I'm sitting there, and I had no control over this. I had no control. I'm sitting there, and I just said, and then I started snoring. Then I started snoring, and I heard him say, "Who the fuck is snoring?" And he's like, "Uche, is that you?" And I'm like, huh?
That's awesome.
He's like, do you want to be a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars? I'm like, huh? He's like, do you want to be a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars of the National Football League? I'm like, yeah. Well, then keep your ass awake during meetings, rookie. I'm like, hey. And everybody, of course, all the veterans are looking at me like, dumbass. Even though they were asleep too, but they just didn't see them.
You should have been like, oh, you get these chairs are too comfortable, coach.
Yeah. This chair is doing wonders for my L2. But yeah, that's just a little bit about some of the antics that I get involved in. But just to kind of bring this whole conversation full circle, I think we're both kind of in agreement in how these situations have played out with Kaepernick and with Garrett. Not good for their image. Certainly not good for Myles Garrett and the amount of money he's going to lose in this, but also with Colin Kaepernick, just a complete disappointment and a complete about face in spirit, I think, of a lot of the things that he was telling people about wanting to play football again. And it's just not something that is really believable at this point. And I think the chat or the book on his story, or the story of Kaepernick and football, as far as it's concerned, is over with in my eyes. But again, I feel like in a year's time, so will his movement. It will be over with. I mean,
he's a fraud, man. It's clear now that he's a fraud. So you like we talked about, you're gonna get people that'll support him no matter what, because you get involved in something, you got that blind loyalty, and you want to see what you want to see. But with what he did now, I think that most people are coming around to unfortunately see this dude's a fraud.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, man, I don't know how to feel about him as in that respect anymore. But I do know that as far as football goes, he did it to himself at this point. He had an opportunity to at least, kind of turn course and kind of get back to football. And, maybe he holds on to all of that stuff, all of the social issue awareness and activism stuff. But, at that time, as a player, you kind of keep that, you kind of handle that on the side as your side gig, but your main gig is football. When it's football time, you keep it football. And I think he lost sight of that. And, it's not going to, I don't think it'll play out well for him in the long run, just because, we see how these SJW types are, man. They're fickle. They move from one crowd to another, and they just, they eat away at the core of whether it's a franchise, whether it's the athlete, whether it's movies, video games, what have you. They eat away at it, and then they move on to the next trend. So we'll see. The White Mat Studio, tell us what you think about the Cowboys and what it's going to take to get a Super Bowl. Jerry Jones giving up control of the operations of the team. That is what it's going to take. Jerry Jones, I mean,
you think Jason Garrett is the guy? You think Jason Garrett and Dak?
Hell no. Jason
can get it done there.
Dak might be able to get it done. He'll have as good a chance as somebody like Aaron Rodgers did when he was trying to prove himself as a top level quarterback, or Phillip Rivers in his and when he was playing his best ball. But Jerry Jones has proven to be the beginning and the end of the Cowboys Super Bowl hopes for decades now. And I mean, I could go into another story about this because I played in Dallas for a little while. But that'll be another 20-minute rant or kind of talk about football, and I'm not sure that everybody wants to necessarily hear that now. I'll save that for another stream. Yeah. But
I'll just say that I think that the Cowboys have the best chance they may ever have right now, because they're not paying Dak yet. They have arguably some of the best weapons on offense right now, with the way Cooper's playing, with the way Randall Cobb's playing. With obviously they have Zeke Elliott there. They have a killer offensive line still that's not quite aged out yet. And that defense is also playing really elite at times. And I don't know if it can really get any better, especially once you give Dak $25 million, which is going to happen.
Ooh, yeah, he's going to get paid. He's going to get paid.
Yeah.
You know who else is going to get paid?
Who?
Buddy from New Orleans.
Teddy Bridgewater?
Teddy Bridgewater. That boy is going to get paid. He might be one of the he will likely be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league next year, I think. The Saints aren't going to be able to hold on to him. And, I mean, there are a lot. I mean, hell, the Bears, that could be somewhere the Bears look to try and fix their problems, because they are.
Bears going to be paying freaking Trubisky, 16 or 17 mil his last year his rookie deal. They're going to sign. If they fucking get Cam Newton, I'll shoot myself in the head. But
Cam Newton's not any different than having Trubisky.
No,
just a better athlete.
He just dresses worse. That's about the only difference. But Teddy Bridgewater a little scary to me. He obviously played great for the Saints, but they also, I trust Sean Payton so much with the game plan and everything that they're going to give him and the weapons he has around him and the scheme that they have there. I feel like there was very little pressure. Like Bridgewater felt so comfortable. So I don't know. I'll always remember Teddy Bridgewater on the sleeping on the field after he got knocked out in Minnesota.
Oh my gosh, man. That was
I've never seen a dude to sleep like literally looking like he was rocking like a baby.
Yeah, his hands were just like this, and he was just. But you know what, man? Louisville has put out two quarterbacks, Teddy Bridgewater, Lamar Jackson, who are both poised. Well, Lamar Jackson's already doing it, but Teddy Bridgewater next year could be in the same position. They're kind of two different styles, right? Teddy Bridgewater is more of that pocket passer, but he can definitely run. He just chooses not to so much.
He's definitely not the athlete that
he's not the athlete that Lamar Jackson is. No, not by any stretch, but he is not a bad athlete. And that would, I feel like this year for him in New Orleans added so much to his career. He was able to level up as a backup quarterback to Drew Brees, learning from that all-time great and learning from an all-time great coach like Sean Payton, and actually elevated his football IQ because of it. And I think this is utterly changed the trajectory of his career, as opposed to what it would have been in Minnesota. I think he was on a road to nowhere in Minnesota after the knee injury. And this, and I wish that NFL teams would do this more. Stop drafting these first-round quarterbacks and then throwing them to the wolves. Trubisky, you think Trubisky wouldn't have benefited from 2 or 3 seasons of not being the starter, of being a backup as a young player, learning to play the game, because when you come from the college to the NFL, you are relearning how to play football, because everything you thought you knew about how to play football in college does not translate into the NFL the same way. And
he only played 12 games in college.
Exactly.
To be fair, I don't know if anything is going to help him throw the ball accurately, but he just seems so lost out there in every way. And
that's because he didn't have the ability to actually grow. Yeah. You're throwing him out there with these top tier elite level athletes, defenders, smart veterans, guys who have the knowledge and the experience to understand how to bait quarterbacks, understand how to apply pressure in ways that we may not get the sack, but you keep the quarterback feeling your presence. And Trubisky never had the opportunity to sit down, observe and learn from a veteran quarterback out there playing. I mean, I wonder where the NFL just left out this entire concept of you draft players so that they can play later, not right now, especially the quarterback position. And a perfect example of that is Blaine Gabbert. You know, he was mentioned earlier in the chat. Blaine Gabbert, and I was there when he was drafted in Jacksonville. Blaine Gabbert's career was ruined because they put him in his first year in the NFL. It was ruined. We all felt it by like week 8, week 9. We were like, this kid he's done. He's done. He has been shell-shocked out of any ability to actually become a good player because his first experiences as a quarterback, and we had one in particular, we had a part of our line that was getting utterly destroyed week in, week out. I mean, it wasn't my side. I know that. I mean, I would turn around and Blaine would be under a pile of bodies, and I'd be like, holy shit, I thought we threw the ball already. And the guy was, and I never blamed Blaine Gabbert. And I backed him up, and I would get genuinely irritated. And I still do to this day. Even when people bring him up and talk about how bad Blaine Gabbert was. Wasn't his fault. His rookie year, he had a lame duck coaching staff that was already promised to be fired the next season. He had been originally slated to be the backup to Dave Garrard. Well, what did they do? They released Dave Garrard the Monday before our first game going into that season and named Chad Henne the starter. No, not Chad Henne. What was his name? McCown.
Josh McCown?
Josh McCown.
He had his brother who backed up Drew Brees for a while. Cade McCown. Cade McNown.
Yes.
Oh, man, I remember Cade McNown. Oh, my God.
Dude, this guy, first game against Tennessee, I was like, oh, my God. Who's going to play quarterback? The second week of the season, we go to the New York Jets. This guy throws 4 interceptions, 3 of them pick sixes. So they pull him, and they put in Blaine Gabbert. First NFL play. Blaine Gabbert calls the play wrong in the huddle. Blaine Gabbert gets body slammed. And that didn't affect that wasn't anything that disrupted his career, that he got body slammed on his first play. But this guy wasn't ready to play. He was not ready to play. We all knew it. He was confident, but he also knew he wasn't ready. He had only been he didn't even show up to training camp until the last 7 days. So he'd only been actually with the team for going on about 15, 16 days when he was asked to go into a game. And then throughout the course of that season, this guy got fucking brutalized. He got brutalized, and it was bad. And one thing people don't know is that his quarterbacks coach that season, his rookie year, that was the first year that guy was ever a quarterbacks coach. This guy doesn't know anything about quarterbacks, but he's coaching the quarterbacks. This was a guy who was a tight ends coach who is now a quarterbacks coach for the first time in his coaching career. And this environment and this setup for Blaine was so utterly dysfunctional and to the point of not being completely non-existent, because that coaching staff knew they were going to be fired at the end of the year. The head coach was fired midway through the season. So it was, there was nothing for him to gain or learn from any of these coaches because they don't, in a way, they don't care. So now he's in a situation where he doesn't really have any guidance whatsoever. And then to make matters worse, we go and hire Gus Bradley as our head coach. And Gus Bradley hires an entire coaching staff of rookie NFL coaches. These guys have 80% of our coaching staff in Gus Bradley's first year were college coaches the year before.
That you see that so often that it makes such a big difference where you get drafted and the organization. You look at a guy like Alex Smith, who went to San Francisco, and at a different coordinator every single year he was there. No consistency at all. Absolutely complete turnover time after time. And then he finally goes to Kansas City to Andy Reid and, ends up having, if they didn't happen to go get Patrick Mahomes, Alex Smith would still be there playing really well, assuming he didn't get his leg shattered like he did in Washington.
Oh, God, man. And I feel bad for that guy, too, because he had just started hitting his stride as a player. And then your leg gets like decapitated on the field. How does that happen?
Do you remember Marcus Lattimore for South Carolina, the running back to South Carolina? Comes back for his senior year. Man, I thought he was going to lose his leg.
Remember the receiver from Alabama? Or was it was Alabama's receiver who literally his ankle snapped in half on a touchdown catch.
Damn.
It was years ago, but I remember that like 2 years after that, he actually was a temporary assistant coach in Jacksonville during training camp, helping coaches set up drills and stuff like that. And the dude's ankle was still a different size from his other ankle, visibly because of that injury. So those injuries, man, those are. I mean, this guy was one of the top receivers in the nation when he had that injury. I think that was at the beginning, or that was kind of during the beginning of the turnaround for Alabama's football program when he got hurt. But man, just bad injuries. But no, man, like you said, when you have the right coaches, and again, Blaine Gabbert's situation was so bad because there was no incentive for any coach to really develop him in his rookie year. And then he had amateur coaches essentially coaching him the next year, which meant that nothing changed. Any strides.
He could almost be used as a scapegoat for that new coach coming in, right? So you can put him in and be like, well, I got this rookie. What do you expect me to do? He's not the guy I drafted, kind of that way, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Maestro 227, I mean, he says it, as well as you can say it. You got to have at least a serviceable veteran until the young guy is ready. And that's the truth. And I think the NFL has kind of lost sight of that. Teams have lost sight of that. And that's why you're seeing guys like Trubisky struggle and really not take the kind of strides that you see in other players. Like there's other elements of Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. There's other elements of their game that allowed them to that gave them a cushion as they learned. These guys are more athletic. These guys move around. They can kind of create plays for themselves. They understand how to sometimes create a play out of nothing just because of their athletic ability. But when you have a guy like Mitch Trubisky, and you have a guy like, guys like Aaron Rodgers, even like these guys are generally pocket passing quarterbacks. They can move around a little bit. They can buy a little bit of time. Aaron Rodgers more so than Trubisky, but you want these guys to be developed and have a good understanding of the game, have a good understanding of reading coverages, have a good understanding of feeling the pocket around them. One of the biggest things that Gabbert could not do is feel the pocket. It's because he didn't have the coaches who taught him how to really understand, feel, and react to the pocket. I mean, and he got skittish. He got skittish in the pocket because of it. And part of that also is because he had a side of that offensive line that, and really it wasn't even a side of the offensive line. It was one particular player on the offensive line who got ran through on a regular. And that dealt hand in hand with his inability to kind of stop, like what's his name said, stop seeing ghosts.
Man, Sam Darnold. Man, I can't believe they broadcast that. That's a different thing. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, that's a whole different thing. But I think that we have had a very good broadcast here, very good time talking about the issues of the day in the NFL. And of course, I added in some of my usual storytelling and long-winded explanations of football culture. But yeah, I do it for the people. I do it for you guys. And I really appreciate you being on the broadcast here with me, Ryan. And anything you want to say before we go, because we're about to wrap this up.
Oh, no, hey, thanks for being here, guys. I think mostly I'm pretty familiar with, but if you're not, check out my channel. I don't do too much sports there. I talk about Star Wars and comics and all that nerd stuff. But you'll catch me over on Sports Wars with Uche. So.
Yeah. Well, everybody, we're going to bring this broadcast to a close. Really appreciate everybody being in on the broadcast. Again, like I said before, make sure you look out for my Primetime Sports Talk podcast, which is going to be coming starting next week. PrimetimeSportsTalk.com. Those guys are starting up some good stuff there. And we will be likely fusing some of the stuff that I am doing with them also into our Sports Wars, which me and Ryan are both a part of. But again, really appreciate everybody who's been on the broadcast. Like we said, Myles Garrett, he's done. Kaepernick, he's done. But we appreciate you guys, and we will catch you all on the next video. Peace.
Peace. And then